Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fifth session in our series of public seminars and Stanford classes on the topic of mobility. Asia moves ahead in the fourth industrial revolution. I'm Richard Dasher. I direct the U.S. Asia Technology Management Center at Stanford. We're very proud to produce this series, and we want to thank all of our member companies for their financial support because that's how we can do this. I'm also very happy to recognize the efforts of a number of organizations that help share the publicity about our events. And we want to welcome everyone here, both if you're a student and also if you're one of our guests from the Silicon Valley community, or if you're coming in from Asia or somewhere else in the world. One thing about Zoom is we have a great mixed group. So today, we want to look at really how do venture capitalists see what's going on with mobility in Asia. I think that we're going to find that from this title slide I saw briefly that at least our speaker venture capitalist thinks that there's a revolution going on in mobility in Asia. Our presentation is going to be by Ms. Madhu Shalini Iyer, who is a partner with rocketship.vc here in Silicon Valley. But like the best tradition of venture capitalists in the Valley, Madhu comes to this profession with operational experience. She was the chief data officer for the Indonesian company Gojek, which started out as a ride-hailing company. Madhu helped grow the business into a $1 billion unicorn. It's now worth well over $10 billion and has what people are calling super app that does not just ride-hailing and delivery, but online banking and education and lots of other things. Madhu was on the board. She started the Singapore office for Gojek. Before that, she was an operating partner at a large private equity fund that built startups across Southeast Asia. And she also has experience as part of the founding team of Intuit's QuickBooks lending platform, where she helped grow the use of that platform to $300 million. Madhu holds 3 patents in areas of user data augmented algorithms for financial inclusion. Madhu, we're delighted that you can take some time and share your thoughts with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Richard, for having me. And it's a wonderful pleasure to be speaking to the class here and to the audience from the public as well. Like I said, thanks again, Richard, and the great team here, Kimberly included, that has very kindly invited me. I've spoken at your forums before, Richard, and I've never been disappointed with the kinds of thoughtful questions that I've got from you and and the class at Stanford. So with that, I wanted to prepare something that folks could take away. At the same time, share this has also been an introspective year, couple years for all of us. And I wanted to, I really actually wanted to think about that as I made my presentation today as well. So with that, I'll start with, the topic that I wanted to speak about was, which is mobile revolution in Asia from a VC's perspective. This is really in a talk in the series of yours of, Asia moving towards the fourth industrial revolution. Thanks for the kind introduction. A quick introduction about myself. As you've mentioned, I've been a global operator and now a global investor. I started my journey in Singapore. I went to University of Sydney in Australia, came to the United States, a few years ago, more than a decade or a couple decades almost ago. I was a data scientist before the word was coined. I started my journey significantly, my significant entrepreneurial journey at Intuit and I worked for, the QuickBooks Capital. QuickBooks is obviously the small business accounting software. There was a lot of data that, that we collected on it. And one of the biggest problems that all small businesses have is getting working capital loans and access to working capital. And we had all of this data, we had all of the users, how do you get them working capital loans? And I was very lucky to be at the right place at the right time, because this was really the fintech revolution just happening in the US. On Deck had just started. Lending Club had been around for about a year. Cabbage was just starting. I, met the founders way back then. And many others like Fundbox that were really thinking about sort of advanced factoring, invoice factoring, and such, and advancing working capital loans to these small businesses. We quickly scaled that business and built it to more than $300 million lent within a year. So that was really fast growth. I moved back to Southeast Asia after building that business up. And I was in a private equity fund trying to invest in fintech startups around Southeast Asia. And I realized that Southeast Asia then still had a need for, for operators. And this was 2014-15 timeframe. Went and joined Gojek and started the Singapore office. I was on the board. I was a chief data officer and saw the, the great mobile revolution there in Southeast Asia. As GoPay was built in Gojek, and on day 3, GoPay had more transactions than the Bank of Indonesia. So that's that was a huge explosion of activity. And then I came back here to the Valley and found myself again in VC, and now I'm at rocketship.vc, which is a global venture capital fund. We do data-driven investing, as in that we find great startups that are like rocket ships at liftoff all across the world. So it's a global venture capital fund, which was a differentiating factor perhaps 2 or 3 years ago, but it's not that much anymore, because everyone in the Valley is investing all over the world, more so than ever before. And I think the pandemic, as we were just speaking about it before the talk started, has really accelerated many things, and global investing and global entrepreneurial ecosystems have never seen such tailwinds as before the pandemic, or since the pandemic started. So with that, I'll get into the content, the meat of this talk. Professor Dasher had defined in his previous presentation mobility as one of 2 things: new ways of getting around and new things to do with mobile devices. And for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to use the second definition, which is new things to do with mobile devices. The Financial Times had this very interesting headline, "The Asian Century is set to begin." The question is, why is this title so apt right now? 2/3 of the planet's population is in Asia. There's transformative tech today that's being adopted by this huge population. In 2010, only half of them had, and as you can see from this graph here, in 2010, only half of them had access to a mobile device with data. And now it's 2/3 that have access to a mobile device with data. And by 2025, it'll be 3/4 of this population that's going to be, having access to a device with data in their hands. And this is really setting the stage for the mobile revolution to explode all across Asia. While China has been, and I'm just going to minimize this here. While China has been a significant part of the Asia story, what has happened in China is very different to what is currently already happening in India, and what I believe is going to continue to happen in Indonesia and other parts of Asia as well. In China, due to a concerted effort of the government and the people, all aspects of the economy underwent rapid change. Roads and bridges and high-speed rail and manufacturing prowess that they, even today, that, they continue to dominate the world with. Open banking systems were allowed by them in the mid-1990s. In all of this, mobile devices and smartphones were an integral part, but they were only one aspect of this incredible transformation. Whereas in India, even though the economy was beginning to open up in the 2000s, basic infrastructure was significantly behind. And there was a tremendous growth in the access to mobile devices. So, it's sort of really China turned on its head, where the infrastructure was not available, it was lagging behind, but the mobile device adoption had started. This consumer adoption really was well ahead of basic infrastructure. And this led to significant product innovation. I believe this model is true for many other parts of Asia as well, like Indonesia, which I've seen. And for this reason, I think India, where I will be focusing a lot of my presentation today, is the poster child for this mobile and internet revolution. So let's dig deeper to examine what really happened in India. This graph shows the mobile subscriber growth in India in the 2010s. However, the initial part of the device was on poor, 2G, 3G networks and feature phones. And in late 2016, something significant happened. A company called Reliance launched Jio, a very affordable smartphone combined with a zero-cost 4G data plan. And this led to them significantly dominating a large user base, switching from feature phones to smartphones. And existing users, about 100 million of them that were on the feature phones switched to smartphones. And on top of that, 200 million new users came on as well. And with a significantly capable phone and a high quality data plan, which was at a minimal or a zero cost, mobile usage and apps became an integral part of an Indian's life. And what did these users do on their mobile smartphones? Messaging, social networking, video consumption, games and gaming, accessing educational info and purchasing things online. These were sort of mainstay, and it led to leading apps for these use cases. And WhatsApp for communication, YouTube, Candy Crush for entertainment and gaming, Flipkart, Snapdeal, and others for commerce. And these became really the basic set of apps almost every Indian phone needed to have.
Madhu, can I interrupt you real briefly?
Yeah.
Because look at the different countries that are represented in those apps that people in India are using, right? Kakao is a Korean company, right?
Yeah. So
WeChat was really a Chinese company.
Yeah. Yeah. So this, I just sort of wanted to illustrate, even though I was going to be concentrating on India, I wanted to be illustrative to this was sort of across Asia, this content consumption, communication consumption by different apps. And some things like Tokopedia and Bukalapak in Indonesia, all of them being representative for their own country ecosystems and startups that were making huge differences. And in the next set of graphs, I'll be showing you how the significant usage increase across these categories happened. The MAUs, or the monthly active users, is in the billions in these three active categories of communication, content, and commerce. It really started with content and communication and moved to commerce. And this graph here starts at 2013, and you can see it's not too much, but then by 2020, it had sort of grown many fold. And with this rapid growth, the ability to pay and perform financial transactions became also quite critical. And these graphs here show digital payment transactions on a yearly basis doubling in a span of 4 years. Apps such as Paytm and PhonePe and Tez were front runners in this. And you can see the usage and the monthly active users in the millions growing. And it all kind of coincides with things becoming really easily accessible. And in 2020, of course, we also saw COVID. And the graph stops at about here, but I'll speak to it in the next slides, as we go through our presentation. And once the payment infrastructure was available, the mobile revolution really spread to other categories like food, clothing, and shelter. For the purposes of this graph, we can, I just wanted to, take two quick startups here. One of them is now going to be an IPO, but in this graph, we can see the rapid pace of growth of the top 2 food delivery startups in India, Swiggy and Zomato, which have been more than doubling every year since their inception. Zomato recently IPO'd in India at a valuation of $15 billion in the Indian stock market, and Swiggy is next in line. Other categories include other areas of the infrastructure that were poised for a leapfrog, digital health and education being the front runners that I wanted to showcase today. This graph shows the rapid growth of telemedicine install base in India to over 15 million users. This category has seen even more growth during COVID because this really, had the benefit of COVID tailwinds. Digital health was, a critical part of what was required in the last couple of years. Similarly, in this graph, you can see the top 2 companies in the space, Byju's and Vedantu in India. Byju's, for example, is acquiring companies all over the world, including in the US, and is poised to an IPO with an expected valuation of about $45 to $50 billion. And the reason for the success of these apps is that there is a big need and the infrastructure is just not there. You cannot import a pre-existing solution from the West and just apply it, in emerging markets. Some of the challenges that need to be solved, include things like lack of an identifiable physical address on the map. I face this all the time at Gojek. I was a chief data officer. We had to figure out the fastest way for a bike rider to get to his ride, and for the rider to get his food delivered on time. And there's just ways in which Indonesians and Indians really give out addresses. Come straight from it's all landmark oriented. Come straight and make a right on the post office, and there's going to be a petrol station at the corner, and the house from the third in the inside of the the street that runs parallel to the petrol station is the house that you need to come to. I mean, Google Maps was not equipped for such a challenge. So lack of an identifiable physical address on the map, multiple languages, lack of credit cards. There was really no credit card penetration at all, and cash on delivery, which just you had to do cash on delivery. There was really no other way. And this is the reason why I think that the indigenous apps were the dominating, were the leaders, and they really dominated over the developed world apps. I think the one thing I will note is that the only different story here is perhaps Amazon. Amazon India started, but Amazon India was very smart. Amazon was very smart to start Amazon India from scratch, rather than importing their US solution to India. So that has seen success, but it took time. The Flipkarts of the world, and the Snapdeals were there for a long time. And Amazon really had to kind of build their Amazon India ground up. So this level of growth combined with the market has led to tremendous value creation and has been recognized by global investors. And as you can see, and this is already, and this is sort of the rapid growth. This chart is already sort of a little outdated. Byju's is now, like I said, going to be 45 to 50 billion. We don't know yet. They've not IPO'd. Paytm and Byju's and Oyo Rooms, different categories. Paytm is a fintech. Byju's is EdTech. Oyo Rooms is is basically like Airbnb. Swiggy and Zomato are delivery apps, and Dream11 is a gaming is a gaming app. So this is really all over. The creation is, the value creation is all over in several different categories. And this has really led to India having a very vibrant and robust startup ecosystem, with several cities becoming hubs of startup activity in India. And this is comparable to global cities like Beijing and New York and London. And I don't mention the Valley because, the Valley is a special place. It is, I think, at the core of, software and crypto and many things, but I think everything is getting decentralized now. It's fair to say that, especially with crypto and other things sort of being all over the world. And part of the secret sauce in India has been the paid forward attitude of the founders of these successful companies. Similar to the PayPal mafia here, I would say. They are the ones that have become angels and mentors. Flipkart's Binny Bansal, the founder, Oyos, Ritesh Agarwal, Creds, Kunal Shah, Vijay Shekhar Sharma from Paytm. They're all very, very big angel investors. They're giving back to the community, they're mentors. And early team members from these gigantic startups launch their own new startups. And you get a lot of access to support systems, to meetups, to advice. There's a lot of talent in India that's getting sucked back into India now. And the local VCs are getting more and more confident because amazing outcomes sort of leads to a virtuous loop of, more and more money going back into better and, newer emerging startups. And now global VCs and, are investing more and more, but the global VCs opened, and this is all 2010s really, global VCs started opening local offices, Sequoia and Lightspeed and Axel and SoftBank and Tiger Global, just huge presence and, a lot of money being infused into India. But the India story is was still not done, because you saw the top tier cities and the top tier cities don't really translate to the rest of the 600 to 700 million people that still live in smaller cities and villages in India. There are 600 million living in these areas and they constitute Bharat, and Bharat is the Hindi word for India. And their needs are still significant and different from the tier 1 cities of India. The rural and the smaller cities, rural areas of India and the smaller cities have poorer infrastructure and needing a different solution. Lack of, financial, robust financial systems there. There's obviously also a trust deficit because they've not, this is not a usual way of interaction. It's all usually in person. And physical hard money and just in-person physical interactions. And then there's also multiple languages. And then there's also, WhatsApp really, but very surprisingly has been very penetrative and so, ways of doing commerce with the integration with WhatsApp and other IM systems is also now becoming a common stay and coming up now. And so once again, thanks to the smartphone revolution, these lives are being transformed now. And we are, and just a disclaimer, we are investors in all of these companies that I've put up now on my slide. And these are all apps for the next 600 million, and we call these Bharat apps. Khata Book is QuickBooks of India, with over 15% of India's retail GDP being recorded in their books. Kutumb, the next icon here, it's really the Reddit of India. With nearly 7,000 communities interacting daily, and the interaction levels are pretty dense. Animal, the third icon here, is India's largest cattle marketplace. And Apna, which is India's fastest unicorn, is really the LinkedIn for blue and gray collar workers. It's a community, it's an upskilling platform. It's also a job seeking, a platform, and that's Apna. And the founders and their stories are equally interesting. Apna's founder, Nirmit, studied at Stanford Business School, went back and found the problem that he really wanted to sort of solve. And has impacted millions of people. Apna has had a huge amount of user buy-in, and the amount of interactions that you have, it's real, it's real problems, it's real people, and it's just been a tremendous value add to the blue and gray collar workers in India. Animal is again a woman founder who was, who was a daughter of a farmer in Rajasthan, one of the states in India, and she went on to becoming an engineer, and she studied at an IIT, which is one of India's leading premier institution for engineering, and she studied at IIT Delhi, and came and worked at Bangalore, and then decided that she really was closest to the problem of, her father's cattle, farming business. And this is really rural India, and started India's largest cattle marketplace. And, it has made a huge difference to the farmers. And she's somebody that really understands what the farming community needs. And for us to be sitting here in the Valley, to be clear, Rocketship invests, using a data-driven algorithm, and ours is a bottoms-up approach. So, great companies show up in our algorithms, and we lean in globally. We've invested in the Valley. We have invested in the rest of the US. We've invested in a Canadian company, in Brazil, in Southeast Asia, of course, in Europe. And India started showing up hugely on our screens in 2016, 2017. And for us to have found these companies and invested in them in the last couple of years, there's something special going on here. And we are not the only global investors, by the way, in any of these startups. However, India has gone through a pretty trying time with the pandemic. COVID has ended up being a double-edged sword. There's rapid spread of the pandemic, but the silver lining, there was a rapid spread, and the Indian numbers were, pretty, it was concerning, and it was sort of disheartening at a time. The only silver lining was that it provided a tremendous opportunity to leapfrog the gaps in infrastructure. Categories like education, finance, HR, upskilling, digital health, businesses, agriculture. There was a huge amount of the huge amount of activity in these categories. Basically, anything that you previously had to do in person, but you could not anymore because of COVID, was transformed. And that's, I think, what the global community also came to realize. The consumer consumption. Also, I think, really investment and VC investment as a whole, as an industry, because we had to all move to Zoom, and now the distances and seeing a founder before you invest in them, many things, have really been transformed because of COVID. And I don't mean to in any way sort of, I think COVID has been a very, very difficult time for the world. But there were a few things that have come out, as a accidental sort of sideline, where global investing has become kind of mainstay now. And these are just my opinions, and I don't really mean to. This is I don't mean to share that at rocketship.vc, but this is as a personal partner at Rocketship. I found these past 2 years sort of transformative for global investing. This growth in both India and Bharat, accelerated by COVID, has led to the highest number of unicorns being created outside of the Valley in India. And these unicorns have spanned all of those categories that we talked about, whether it be Apna in community upskilling, and others in various different categories. As you can see in this, in this chart on the left, Apna is at the top. It was also one of the fastest Indian startups to become a unicorn. You have the Mobile Premier League, MPL, which is a gaming app, which also became a unicorn. You have a B2B like Zetwork, Grofers, which is a grocery delivery place. There's just a lot of different, and CoinDCX, which is crypto, which is a cryptocurrency platform. There's a lot of different sectors and categories that have taken off. And to double down on the unicorns created, let's examine the number of unicorns created pre-Geo, which is pre-2016. Pre-2016, before Geo, Reliance Geo, there were only about 7 or 8, a handful of unicorns. And since then, we can see the explosion that has happened in India. And 2021, 2020, especially, there's just, a dozen, there's just so many more. And now it's home to 52 unicorns. India is home to 52 unicorns with, some of the fastest ones being created in the last year or so. All this has really led to global investors recognizing India as one of the most attractive investment destinations. Large investors in this chart, as you can see, large investors like Tiger Global, Sequoia, and SoftBank have committed a significant amount of capital to Indian startups. And these investments span a wide base of sectors dominated by e-commerce, fintech, and SaaS. And B2B really is also hugely emerging right now. We have to see, I zoomed in on consumer, but there's just a lot of activity in B2B as well. And I'm sure there'll be many, many more to come. Indian startups raised a total of $7.8 billion in the first 4 months of 2021, and 70% of the total haul of 2020 already. The sum is also over 50% of the 14.2 billion or so, 14.2 billion or so total funding dollars raised in 2019. Moreover, things really show no signs of slowing, and I'm already sort of behind a couple quarters, talking about the first 4 months of 2021 here. 2021 has already seen 400 and more funding rounds, compared with about 1,000 total in 2020, and about 1,100 in 2020 and about 1,000 in 2019. So the average round size is also growing. It's now 25 million in 2021. It's up from about 15 million in all of 2020. And so, I think what's happening is that the round size, the average deal size is increasing. And also what's happening is that the frequency of the raising a round in India and in other emerging markets is rapidly increasing as well. I think shifting a little bit away from the focus of this presentation or from India and Asia to LATAM, I believe, in my opinion, something very, very strong and potent is happening in LATAM as well. There's a lot of startups that are getting now interest from Sequoia and others that had paused investing in LATAM, and now things are back up. So it's a special decade, for a special century, I should say, for the emerging markets, and Asia definitely is at the forefront of this. And what's really next for Asia? Asia in general and India in particular, smartphone penetration is just only going to increase, as you can see from the graph or from the image. And it's going to increase significantly, nearing about 83% and more, and 83%, and more than 2/3 of that will have access to high quality internet connection, leading to the mobile app ecosystem contributing nearly $2 trillion to the country's GDP. And this level of contribution will expand past the categories we've discussed in the previous slides. And they really will touch every aspect of a person's life. Significant opportunities, include construction, climate change, renewable energy, space and remote sensing environments. Rapid 5G rollouts is only going to make, or is going to accelerate all of this. And I think that I really do think that a development and maturation of the capital markets and venture ecosystem is going to be inevitable. And that inevitability is going to also accelerate, it's really a virtuous cycle, it's a virtuous loop, and it'll accelerate, some of the harder problems like construction and climate change and renewable energy, which India really requires, and that's what is, I think, heartening and at the front and center of this revolution. And that brings me to the last slide, to summarize really what an exciting time we are in. Here's a quick comparison. The first revolution was the steam engine. The second revolution was the advent of computers. The third was internet. And now the fourth and the most exciting one yet, in my opinion, is riding on the ubiquitous axis of the mobile phone. And as we've seen, Asia, again, is at the forefront of this revolution, thanks to the combination of the really large market size, meeting the exciting entrepreneurial ecosystems. And I think, I would like to sort of conclude this prepared remarks with saying that, I urge, I think that entrepreneurial, appetite is now global more so than ever. And there are many, many exciting, avenues and areas to create new startups. And I urge everybody here to consider becoming an entrepreneur in the larger, part of the world. It's not constrained to any ecosystem anymore. And while I won't sort of push Asia on anybody, but I think that there's just many ecosystems that are open now for disruption. Beyond just the Valley and a few others that have always been dominating this. And the other thing that I will say is that investing also is, at a very unique place, because, you're going to be able to invest anywhere. We are invested as Rocketship in a company called Chipper Cash in Africa. And that has done tremendously well. And and it's not just the dollar value of the investment and the ROI, but it's the difference it's making in the lives of the African diaspora with payments and remittances, and really sort of making a lot of things accessible to Africa and the African diaspora. And I'll conclude my prepared remarks here, Richard.
Okay, Madhu, thank you for a wonderful presentation. We've gotten a lot of great comments in chat already and some great questions in chat. I want to stress that we're really fortunate to have you as our speaker today, because rocketship.vc is not really aiming at particular regions, really using this data-driven approach to investing kind of naturally led you to invest in these companies in India and elsewhere in the world. And yet at the same time, your knowledge of those regions is absolutely fantastic in explaining why it's a good opportunity to everyone. I want to thank you so much for that. Kind of my question to get things started, and then I'll get to the questions from the audience, is when you're dealing with such very different situations in different Asian countries and even different regions of a large country like India, how do you evaluate, how do you put those kind of differences into the model for evaluating whether or not to invest, and also for actually valuing the company?
The valuations is one topic that I would have had a very, I wish I could have had a very thoughtful answer for you, Richard, but it has been, and I'm just going to be very transparent about this. I think that this past few years in the startup ecosystem and in the VC ecosystem has been a crazy tumultuous time. A lot of valuations are very well deserved. It's always obviously related to the volumes and the addressable markets and the number of users. but there's also been a lot of froth in the market. And it depends on sectors and categories, and fintech and it also really is a value that a category and a segment provides to the ecosystem, to the population. It's a little out of whack. There is really no prescribed formula here, or no prescribed sort of a ratio, which used to be, but not so much anymore. But I think the one thing that I will say, for the VC ecosystem and the startup ecosystem, is that all of the valuations are grounded in some very strong fundamentals, and that's, I think, very heartening. The strong fundamentals are the usefulness of the category, the amount of difference it's making, the number of users that are interacting, on these platforms and these startups. There's also the value creation that's happening that one can see for the consumer apps, and for the B2B and others. There's always revenue and other positive metrics that we are tracking closely. It's a little out of whack, but I would say that it's still sort of, there's some fundamentals to it. If that answers your question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're getting so many questions, I'm going to go in. But our first question that I'll read is from Richard Chung. And before I give his question, I want to tell everybody that on November 11, we're going to have 2 more speakers on India in our series. We have a panel discussion with Mr. Amitabh Khan, who is the CEO of Niti Aayog, a very big think tank in India, and also Mr. Gopal Vittal, who is the CEO of Airtel, one of the largest wireless communications companies in India. So we will come back to things on policy with that session. But first, Richard asks, what impact has the every adult in India should have a bank account policy by the government made to digital commerce in India? How successful is the government's campaign?
Yeah, I think it is transformational in nature, but there are still gaps in ease of use. I think that's my overarching sort of commentary on that. Yeah, but
can I take that in a different direction? I'm curious how much of this incredible growth of startups has led to disruption of existing industries. So are the traditional banks hurting? Not only in India, but all across Asia. How do you see that?
I think fintech is one of my favorite subjects to discuss any day. And I would say that it really depends. I think that the US banks and some of the other banking ecosystems that I've seen have very poor infrastructure, legacy systems that has been, it's been very difficult for them to catch up with basically the newness of technology and of mobile first and so on and so forth. But in India and in some other in India and some other sort of emerging markets, I think that the banks, even the traditional banks, have had to develop their, they've developed really quickly, and they're not legacy systems. And so, I would say an ICICI bank in India, or any one of the other banks in India is actually much more nimble than, the legacy system sort of built, banks in the US. And in some of the other developed markets. So I think that India and Asia are very unique in that legacy systems don't exist in traditional banks. And so the fintechs in India really have to bring something else to the table than just sort of relying on technology, for example. But the government policies therefore benefit them more then I think then that the fintechs that it benefits the fintechs, because now you don't really have an edge. The fintechs and the startups don't really have an edge.
Yeah.
It's not really technology. You know what I mean? So that's it's an interesting ecosystem. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anupam Khanna says, I agree with you that Jio's disruptive initiatives catalyzed a lot of activity, but there were other catalysts as well. Could you say something about the role played by India Stack and also about the JAM Trinity, JAM Trinity? Weren't they transformative for their ecosystems? Comment on that would be great.
JAM for everybody here in the audience is Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, the Aadhaar card, which is basically
this is a using not biomimetics, but biometric identification of really basically over 1 billion people, right, in India.
That's right. So they have an Aadhaar card, that each Indian has as an identity, as a universal identity. It's a very big problem because it's more than 1 billion people in India to have executed that successfully. And of course the mobile. So the M of JAM is mobile. I think that not really, but their growth is way slower compared to the impact of the startups. That and because the startups are quicker, I would say. Fundamentally, I think it has been very transformative, but has it really sort of spurred an action that has made a startup fail or not? I don't know. I think it's an interesting question. It's very interesting to think about, but I would sort of say that I'm not sure. Yeah.
Would you comment on India Stack?
I would say that startup really focuses on ease of use, and these are not really these are doing something slightly different. Yeah.
Okay.
Aiming
Thank you.
at that, but it's slower. It is slower. Yeah.
Okay. So Jesse Chuang asks a question about what are the bigger opportunities in infrastructure investment in India? Would you highlight them? Actually, I'd kind of like to take that and kind of put it in the context of what you said, Madhu. The startups are faster. They've leapfrogged the infrastructure. As the infrastructure develops, what happens? Will the startups' opportunities disappear? Do you see the infrastructure development now as a good opportunity? What areas of infrastructure?
I think that power is a very big one for India. It's a lot of people, and that would be truly transformative, I think. Problems like power and also, climate change. I think it's everywhere in the world, but in India, such a large country like India, especially, those are very, very, I think that those are really truly transformative. If I had to pick, a few. Regarding infrastructure, sort of, with the development of infrastructure, I think everything in consumer and all of that is here to stay. And B2B, these are different categories. And I think we didn't really touch on them during the presentation. But as as we start investing, in these startups that are going to now make a huge difference to the infrastructure, these startups are going to be building on top of infrastructure. And I think it's only, value-added services. That's how I see it, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Cynthia says, fabulous presentation. Thank you so much. Do you have thoughts as to what can be done to increase the levels of digital equity in India and elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, I think, I don't really have, I don't really have much commentary on this. I would say that, yeah, if specifically what is the digital equity, in the context of what she's asking, is there some?
Yeah, I'm not sure about exactly the term. Maybe Cynthia, you could write in chat a little bit more. I'm guessing it could be have versus have not digital access versus not having digital access?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the crux of the presentation. I think that really when I said EdTech and access to education, more amounts of the smartphone exposure in tier 2 and tier 3 cities in rural India. Once you have access to education, I think that will help in closing the gap. The education gap will be filled. Of course, cheaper devices too. That's the other thing. Manufacturing and cheaper devices. Those are the other areas that I'm really hoping that will make a difference to the digital equity.
Well, in some ways, the equity has already increased a great deal. That's why you've seen so much growth in these areas in the last 5 or 10 years. Before that, when you would go to India, there were a lot of people using feature phones, but there was very limited things they could do with them.
That's exactly what I was saying, that, some of it it's the crux of the presentation. There's a lot more to be done, with, like I said, with education and, and manufacturing, homegrown manufacturing with much cheaper devices and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you see cell phone penetration from this point? So Hesham asks, when will 90% of Asia be using mobile?
Well, I think, from the last slide that I had said, about 83% are going to be, quickly on to mobiles by 2025 is what data suggests. I would say 2025 to 2030. Yeah, somewhere between, maybe 2028. Yeah.
Okay. Question from Mr. Masahiko Oishi. Thank you very much for your impressive presentation. I have a question. What characteristic of a management team do you associate with the company becoming a unicorn? Are there any differences between what becomes a unicorn in the Asia that you're looking at and in other countries?
I think this I had also covered in one of the slides before. The ability to learn rapidly in Asia, to fail quickly, to learn quickly with your products, because the addressable market is so large. But I think a great entrepreneur is always somebody with or without the addressable market, or the test cycles, somebody who can learn very, very rapidly. That's one. And I've seen that across the board with every founder that I've spoken to from this side of the globe and the other side of the globe as well. And also, I think, I think that's I think I would kind of put that on top of everything else. Yeah.
Okay. I have kind of an anonymous question, which comes in that one of the criticisms about, quote, innovation in Asia is that so many of these apps were copycats of things that had developed in the US or elsewhere before. What would you say about things that really were not copycats? How do you address that? How do you address that criticism?
I think that you're absolutely right that there was a first wave of, of just copycat apps that came through. You had the Gojek and the Grab, to the to definitely to Uber and Lyft. But I think as the ecosystems are maturing and developing, there is a little bit of a twist where now there are apps like Apna that I spoke about, which is the LinkedIn for gray and blue collar workers. That really is not a it is sort of the LinkedIn, but it is much more. It would not have it doesn't really exist anywhere else, because you cannot have an app that's doing upskilling, because they're trying to teach English to these plumbers and to the slum dwellers of India, really, and because it's a very aspirational thing there. it's upskilling, it's how do you do your trade. It's many different things all at once. And so, that doesn't exist anywhere. There's no prototype there. So it's really upskilling plus community. There's also some other investments that we're looking at now that are, mobile first, and the way they are using the infrastructure for communication. It's very different. It's very Asia focused, and it's very Asia first. Now, how do you kind of solve networking issues, and dropping networks, and the vastness of of data plans and whatnot, sketchy data. It's a different. I think that the world is changing, where now it's not just copycats anymore. Yeah.
Well, if you don't mind, let me throw in my 2 cents on that particular topic too, because if you look at what happened when the originals, Uber, tried to go into Southeast Asia, they were not successful, and eventually Grab bought their Southeast Asia operations. So there was something that the companies, the indigenous companies, did across Asia that really captured what the markets wanted, what the kind of constraints there were to doing the business.
Yep.
And, the American companies that may have had the original kind of basic idea did not do so well. And look what has happened to Grab and Gojek now. They have developed into very different things than Uber and the other ride-hailing companies are. So, that's one of the things that's exciting about looking at these other countries, is how things can develop, even if they do come kind of from a similar idea. It's not only the idea, it's the execution and then the expansion.
I think, even with the Napna example, Facebook really didn't work for most Indians. That's the reason they're on Apna, trying to sort of communicate with each other and whatnot.
Another kind of comments coming out of chat is that, the sort of role of these successful firms in an economy. So China has seen a real crackdown on the most successful IT firms over the last year or so. And we're even seeing a lot of kind of social sort of kickback reaction against the giants, the Zuckerbergs and the Gates and the so forth here in the United States. Has that started to happen elsewhere in Asia yet? Are you seeing resentment against the extremely successful people who are behind these companies? Do you think we will, or will they do something different?
I think that, I really don't know of that yet. I think at the end of the day, again, I'm just going to be candid here. This is a philosophical answer to the question. Human nature is a very funny thing, and you have the haves and you have the have-nots sometimes. And then you have, I think that with money and with a lot of power comes some natural tendencies. And this is all sort of, deeply psychological, deeply evolutionary in nature. So for me to sort of, sit back and make a comment that has not happened yet or will not, or, have a reasoning for that, I think that it would be premature and it would not be thought out. I would say that that's a natural cycle. But having said that, I wouldn't sort of want to, flog a dead, I don't want to comment on it too much, because I haven't seen it.
That's quite all right. I didn't mean to put you into a difficult position. It's really not in the portfolio we asked you to talk about. I think, but, I'll comment on it, because I think that looking at the next 600 million is an area to capture value, but it does make their lives better.
It does make their lives totally better. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so this is one of the things that I'm hoping we'll see here, is more attention by startup companies, not just to having a killer business, but to having something that will lead to more social inclusion, that will have things that will be good for sustainability and that everyone can kind of get behind. I think there's a lot of pressure for that in sort of not only the investment community, but the public these days.
Yeah, and I think to be completely honest, I think there is a lot of value creation that's happening at the edges at the moment. But there is a natural cycle, and and while I see the value creation being immense for the have-nots and the people that really require it, I also I also am very cognizant of of sort of income, the income disparity and other things, and the wealth creation, and and all of that. So anyway, but there is no resentment yet, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we asked you to talk about Asia, and you focused a lot on India. And I think that you gave us very good reasons why. I'm curious, though, about the kind of internationalization. I interrupted you earlier in your talk about look where these applications came from. Are you seeing that sort of pan-Asia internationalization among startups? Is it going from India to other places a lot now?
Absolutely. I think, I think that Southeast Asia is a very interesting example here. Southeast Asia is people think that Southeast Asia is just one region and it's homogeneous. It's not. I do think that, what starts in Indonesia is not easily adaptable in Vietnam and other places, but then that has happened with Lazada, that has happened with Gojek, that has happened with Grab. And there are a lot of examples where that has happened. So Southeast Asia, we see more and more of that. India too, I think, India is seeing some, really interesting opportunity, B2B startups especially, lots of homegrown B2B startups in India that have a huge amount of, customer base in Southeast Asia, and beyond MENA, Middle East and North Africa. So there's a lot of, sort of international exposure within Asia. And then outside of Asia as well. We have a startup, Moglix, and they have about 35 countries, using their products. So there is, and this is not even just within Asia; it's outside Asia. Locus is another logistics solution. It's an Indian startup with a lot of customers in the US, and in Europe, and in Singapore, in Australia, and other places. Yeah.
So here's another one that you may not want to answer. If you don't, just say so. Do you think Southeast Asia has kind of reached a sort of less rapidly growing point? Has it sort of topped off, or is something going on down there that is kind of working against this evolution?
It's interesting because Southeast Asia was growing pre-COVID. We found a lot of great companies in Southeast Asia from our algorithms. During COVID, we didn't really find that many in Southeast Asia. Perhaps the activity in India was a lot hotter, perhaps. But it's a point that I've pondered about, where there was definitely a slowing down of some sort in Southeast Asia. Although the activity has picked right back up, and we are seeing some interesting founders and some very interesting companies in fintech and in every realm, in every category. But Southeast Asia has definitely seen a COVID downturn. I would say that's my personal opinion. But it's coming back up. It's back up for sure. The founder quality has gotten so much better now, that I see Southeast Asia from when I knew it. There is a lot of hiring challenges, not just in Southeast Asia, but in India too. Now you have like engineers in India and Bangalore. They earn the comparison of salaries is, it's the same. It's almost similar to Silicon Valley. I mean, I wouldn't say exactly as much, but in the rest of the US, perhaps. This is crazy, and this has just happened in the last 2 years. And so Southeast Asia now, where they were turning to India for engineers and technology talent, has to look elsewhere because there is a huge cap on on talent needs, especially technology talent needs, and this is a real problem.
If labor cannot move, then things change very quickly.
Not just labor cannot move. India used to be Southeast Asia's, technology hiring pool.
Okay.
Lower,
yeah.
The talent cost was lower. My point is that India has become so expensive now, in terms of salaries for engineers and software,
I see.
Professionals, that it is very competitive, and Southeast Asia has to go elsewhere now, because I don't think that India is what it used to be for talent reasons. They just can't afford it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So this is one I think you'll like. Jesse Chuang asks another question. What are the deep tech innovation domains that are most exciting to you in the next 5 years, or that you're most interested in as an investor? Either one.
I think that I think I've answered this, but I will say climate change again. Climate change is hugely.
So how are you defining deep tech? How do you define it?
I would say deep technology, anything to do with, biotech space, climate change would be in that realm too. Research materials. I'm defining those things as deep technology. Basically, anything that requires sort of fundamental research. Yeah.
Okay. And so those are the areas that you're most excited about.
And as an investor, obviously, these are, I'm excited by everything, but you can't sometimes invest in everything. But, if I had to pick a couple, I would put climate change right at the top. Yeah.
So China has made a massive investment, as well as national policy, that artificial intelligence is going to be a national priority and that it intends to lead the world. What about the advanced IT abilities in India or elsewhere in Asia? Can they keep up?
I think AI is, I think China has done a lot in AI. And they're definitely sort of recognized leaders there. I think that I believe India in, even in space, has made a lot of advancements recently. And I really do think that, India is coming up with several good solutions and local solutions. Time will tell. Does it have the ability? Certainly. It has got the talent pool. It's got some extraordinary research scientists and computer scientists and research institutions. I meant. Time will tell. I do think, and they've come up with some incredible solutions as well.
And if you take the logic that Kai-Fu Lee used in his book on AI superpowers, right, India is also generating a massive amount of data. So there's plenty of data to analyze.
Absolutely. I do think that, using artificial intelligence in innovative ways is not going to be a stretch for India. I'll go on to say this. Yeah. I do definitely believe that that's going to be the case. Yeah.
Okay. So this has been just an incredible session. Eye-opening statistics and really great discussion about many different topics, all related to this mobile revolution in Asia. If we don't have more questions in the audience, what we'll do is we'll end the formal part of the seminar and move into a more informal, off-the-record format where you can ask your question directly. We're not going to try to make you do it through chat and have me read it out. So I don't see any more questions coming into chat. This has been a great interactive session though, Madhu. Thank you very much for dealing with all of the questions that have come out, as well as for a great presentation. Thanks so much for today.
Thanks a ton for having me.